All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 10th session of Office Hours. I feel like it's pretty wild to say that. It's come a long way since we started this out last summer. I'm not sure if many of you have been to more than one of these, but feels like a nice little milestone to have hit. And really grateful for all of you to be here joining me today to talk a little bit about n8n and getting it online in a nice like production ready state, and of course taking some time to answer questions from you all in the audience. If this is your first time here, Office Hours is a monthly live stream where we demo new things that are going on around ngrok, answer questions like I said, and kind of just have this community space to talk to you all, the engineers and developers who are like kind of the backbone of ngrok. I'm Joel. I lead the DevRel efforts at ngrok, and do all sorts of content things. I'm joined by Aishika. Aishika is kind of in the background right now, helping out with some, maybe technical questions you all have about the workshop that we'll be doing. So the goal here, like I said, is to introduce you all to a way to get your self-hosted n8n instance online and manage the traffic to it in some really powerful ways. I am going to drop in the chat here a link to a Notion page. Should be public. Let me know if there's any issues there, where you can follow along with what I am going to be building. All of the instructions are there. So again, if you get like lost along the way or get stuck somewhere or just want to build this on your own after we've gone live, and after we kind of close the session, that will be available for you. And if you do want to follow along and you haven't yet installed n8n, you can install the free version using either npm. Again, I'll drop these links here in the chat, or their Docker-based installation. I recommend the Docker-based installation just because it's nice and clean and lets you kind of, you can set everything up today, and then you can just as easily delete everything if you don't want to actually keep using it. Makes that process really simple. And then the other step to take care of before we kind of jump into the whole workshop is to just go to HTTP localhost port 5678. That's where the n8n dashboard is. And the first step that you'll need to take there is to create an admin account. I think it just asks for your name, your email address, and a password. And that's kind of like n8n's built-in authentication method. And you'll need to have that all set up before we can get into it. Before we jump in, and maybe just to give folks a couple minutes to kind of get situated, maybe deal with some technical issues, try to get n8n installed on their system. Just maybe take a few minutes to do some quick updates from the community. Aishika, are you on stage? I'm going to add you to the stage, maybe unwillingly, but let me know, like, what's going on in the ngrok community. What do you want to share with everybody? What kind of links, events, etc. can we share with them today?
So we've got a couple of things lined up for this month, and today I'm working actually from home, so you might see my cat a couple of times, as always. Everyone at ngrok knows that. So, well, welcome to my life. But on the community side, on Discord, we are having an absolute blast on our server. We just crossed more than 350 members that I'm really happy about. And alongside that, we have got a couple of events lined up alongside office hours, which is virtual. We do look forward to hosting a lot of workshops on our Discord server, on our YouTube channel. You might see a lot of activity on YouTube as well. We are posting a lot more for visual learners like myself. I mean, I love documentations, yes, but I also love watching videos and following along. So that's what we are focusing on a lot. And we are also hosting our first meetup at the ngrok HQ in association with Composio. I've got amazing friends at Composio, and they are kind enough to host an MCP meetup with us. A lot of people use ngrok to host their MCP servers, so I'm really excited to be able to host this meetup for you folks to join. I'll drop all the links. Oh, Joel has already done that. So we'll be dropping more links, and yeah, we just have a lot of swag now. So make sure you participate in our events and come grab them.
Thank you very much. And we've got some really to me, very exciting content coming. I think I had to go run and let my dog inside. I might have missed. Did you if you mentioned the YouTube channel that we're doing a ton on? Awesome. Thank you. We also are going to have shipping, fingers crossed, later today, a examples or template gallery in our documentation that will hopefully show a lot of like interesting patterns and shapes of using ngrok and traffic policy to do get certain things online, solve certain jobs for you, certain problems that you're having. I'm really excited about it, and I wish I could have shared it with you right now, but just ran out of time to get it deployed ahead of time. But stick around, check out the docs later today, and it should be up there. Would be super grateful for everyone to check that out and maybe even contribute to it in the future. Amazing. So I think with that, hopefully people are those who are interested in following along with this n8n workshop are situated. They've got n8n running on localhost, and they've already created the account that you need to kind of be able to get in and look at workflows. Before I actually jump in, we want this to be fun for you and for you to learn stuff. And we also are going to be offering swag to those who kind of follow along with the process, try to build alongside what I'm building. We'll have at the very end, we'll have a form that you can fill out with the public URL of your n8n instance, your email. We're asking for some feedback about ngrok as a product, and we'll kind of dig through the entries to that form, and depending on how many people fill it out and follow along, maybe prioritize people based on their interactions or whatever kind of qualifications we want to come up with. But we want to make sure that everyone gets some swag as an appreciation for following along. With that said, I think I will share my screen, and it looks like there's no other questions that are kind of stopping us from getting started. So let me manage all my tabs here and try to fill in the radio silence with something that is not quite so awful. And we'll share my screen. Okay. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I know that this is always a kind of challenge of reading terminal output, but we're not going to be spending a ton of time in the terminal today, actually, compared to other office hours sessions if you joined us before. So all I'm doing here is showing you that I have my n8n instance running on Docker, and it's just telling me that I can visit it on localhost, all that good stuff. So hopefully you're in a similar position. I have already opened the tab up here. You can see, maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger as well. I'm here at localhost and just the homepage of n8n. The first thing that we want to do here is create an endpoint for this n8n instance. So this is the one step that will involve the terminal. And hopefully everyone can kind of follow along as I'm doing this. Again, the instructions are in that Notion doc. But I know it might be hard to try to balance multiple things at the same time, but I'll just try to go slowly, take breaks, and hopefully if people have questions, we can get those resolved before moving on. So let's create an internal agent endpoint on this. Obviously, you're on the same system where you have n8n running, and we're going to use this 5678 port to make that service available. So we're going to do ngrok HTTP, saying that we want to create an HTTP endpoint. We're going to specify the port, like I said, 5678. And then we want to specify a specific URL. And there's a reason for that I'll get into in a little bit. But for now, let's all just enter https ://n8n.internal. So at this point, you actually haven't gotten your n8n instance online. We have a couple more steps to take to get that taken care of. And before I jump into that, just checking to make sure there's nothing in the chat, no questions. Some folks are maybe still trying to install n8n. Totally get that. So what I want to do next actually is have you all open up your ngrok account at ngrok.com and log into the dashboard, because I want us to reserve a domain for our n8n instance. Depending on the account you have and whether you use ngrok for other things, you might have already, like if you have the free account, you might have already used your one free static domain for this for something else. And if that's the case, you can skip this step and you can create a kind of ephemeral URL for your endpoint. But if you can create a domain, follow along as I click new domain, and I'm going to name mine office hours 10, and we'll just let that autocomplete. And I just want this ngrok.app. I'll hit continue. And then I have reserved that domain for myself, and I can kind of close out of all of this. You can see here now that I've reserved that and nobody else can take that domain from me. And I can use that for this demo here. Let's see if everybody, just give a shout if you're having issues, and we'll take a beat to try to get them cleared up. So next up, I want to create a cloud endpoint. This is going to be essentially the front door between the public internet and your n8n instance, which you are running off of your laptop or a Raspberry Pi or some other device that you own, right? So let's all head over to the endpoints section of the dashboard under Universal Gateway. And you should actually be able to see your internal agent endpoint here as well. As you can see with mine, I have this n8n.internal. And if you want to take a little detour and check this thing out, you'll see that you can't actually open an internal, like a .internal address in your browser or anywhere else. That's because it's private to your account. And we can all have our own n8n internal endpoints, and they don't conflict with each other because they're kind of scoped to our individual accounts. And we're going to use this pair of cloud endpoints and internal endpoints to create this bridge between the public internet and your n8n instance, but also kind of like keep them separated so that you're not exposing a port on your service, and traffic can only flow through ngrok. That means you can control it at any stage, and we'll show you a couple ways to do that in just a minute. So I'm going to click New, Cloud Endpoints, leave public as it was, and then just type in, you might see this autocomplete depending on the state of whether this is out to the public or not, but just type in the URL that you just reserved and click Create Endpoint. So I'm going to take another beat there to see where we are. People are still installing. They're still getting set up. Hopefully folks are following along just fine. Just keep alt-tabbing in the wrong screen. So we have this cloud endpoint now. This is fantastic, but it's actually not set up to forward traffic to your internal agent endpoint that you created just a moment ago. So let's take care of that. I recommend that you copy and paste these YAML snippets from the Notion doc. Otherwise, I think it could, with syntax and indentation and issues that, come with dealing with YAML, you might have issues, and it's probably just easier to do it this way. But what this policy does is that it's saying on every HTTP request that comes into your cloud endpoint, you want to use this forward internal action, and you want to forward that traffic directly to n8n.internal. I'm going to save that. And now I can try to open up this URL, this public URL. And you can see here that now I'm accessing my n8n instance through this public URL. And actually, I'll share this in the chat. I'll put my own, n8n instance at all of your mercy. If you want to jump in there and poke around a little. Actually, no, wait, you can't, because you can't log in. So, hooray for the authentication that n8n comes with. But you can at least go and see the login page and see that this is all working. So again, Miguel, yes, this video, we're live streaming to YouTube. So as soon as we close things up here, it should be available immediately after we finish. And you'll be able to follow along as there as well. Lovely. Okay, we're gonna keep rolling. If people are, I'll stop if there's any questions or particular issues. But we'll just keep rolling through this. Um, so kind of as I've been talking about a few times, and like why we're setting up this cloud endpoint, forwarding to an internal endpoint. Um, we kind of call this the front door pattern around ngrok, and it's really powerful because it, as I said, like creates the separation between the public internet and this front door of your cloud endpoint and your services. And like it kind of acts as like this middleware, and lets you really finely control the traffic and make sure that you have things set up exactly the way you want, like specific access to your n8n instance, which we're going to cover in a little bit. You can do a lot of other things with this pattern as well. Like you can host any number of services under a single domain name, and route to them based on like paths or subdomains or cookies or any other variable that you want to implement here. And I'll show you a little bit how to do that later. You can also apply certain policies at the cloud endpoint, and then other policies specific to your n8n instance. And you can, as I said, like you prevent your host service from being directly exposed to the public internet. So lots of benefits of doing things this way, and a really powerful kind of function of this new ngrok with traffic policy. So now that we have this, this public version of n8n up and running, we can actually go back and update our container as well. That makes it so that when you're creating webhooks or just kind of like interacting with n8n, it's not trying to do things from localhost. It's using your ngrok domain to handle all of those paths and all of those like information that it gives you. So again, I'd recommend jumping into the Notion doc to see what this looks like, but I'm just gonna stop my n8n container. And I have this command here in the Notion doc, where you can set the webhook URL environment variable. And to set that up, you can just replace ngrok URL with the domain name that you reserved, which would be, for me, is office hours 10.ngrok.app. And I'll restart the Docker container. And then I should be able to just reload this and everything will work as expected. But kind of like behind the scenes within n8n itself, it's kind of recognized that it has a public URL and it's not just running on localhost. And to that end, I'll probably just close down the other one, and we'll just be using this one that's public. So let's take another moment here to see what's going on. Yep, we'll be able to stream this, or you'll be able to watch this again later. For folks that are struggling to install n8n, I apologize. But hopefully you'll be able to take some time later today or tomorrow or this weekend, get things set up, and you'll be able to follow along at your own pace with the rest of this workshop. Appreciate you being here nevertheless, and we will have time in just a few minutes for questions about n8n or what I've showed you, or really anything else that you might be curious about ngrok. All right, we're gonna keep things rolling. We're gonna start to actually use this traffic policy engine to shape traffic as it comes into your n8n instance. And this is where, to me, things get really interesting, because as I mentioned before, like this URL, office hours 010 at ngrok.app, this is publicly available now. Anybody can access this. You could, do all sorts of stuff with it if you wanted. You could log in if you knew my credentials. And I really don't want that to be how things work. I really want to have this a little bit more locked down. And one of the really powerful ways that you can do that is with IP restrictions. And this is an action that comes with ngrok. You can specify a specific IP or a number of IPs that you want to allow access. Excuse me a moment. Too much talking. And that kind of locks everything down in a really effective way. So we're going to go to a specific URL. This is a little helper page that ngrok has. I'm just going to blast my IP address to the internet at large. It's ipv4.ngrok.com, and that just basically spits out a little JSON response with your public IP. So from here, you can copy that public IP, and then actually, you know what? We're going to do things a little bit differently. We're gonna copy this block of traffic policy code into our traffic policy editor here, and we're saying that, you know, when traffic comes in, we want to use the restrict IP traffic policy action. Actually, I think it is IPs. We want to enforce that, and then we can specify a particular URL here. So now I'll go back to here. I'll copy this without the quotes and drop that in here. I'll click save. And now if you try to hit this public URL again, you will get an error from ngrok saying that your public IP does not match the one that I have explicitly said is the only one that I want to allow to have access to n8n. Yes, important. Let's see here. Important points about traffic policy in general is that the order does matter. As you can see here, I have the restrict IPs action up top. So maybe, whoops, didn't mean to delete that. I'll make this a little bit bigger even now that I'm looking at the stream. This means that I want to enforce this rule first. And so if an IP address doesn't match the one that I've set up here, it's going to be blocked immediately. And only if the IP does match will the traffic get forwarded. So yes, keep in mind that that order does matter. And I will, as we work through this, kind of show you, we're going to keep adding things to the top to make sure that things are ordered in the right way so that traffic comes through the way that we expect it to. Yeah, awesome. All right, let's keep things rolling because we still have to do a whole bunch of stuff with webhooks, which I think is one of the reasons why a lot of people are excited about using n8n and kind of comes back to the same problems of like why ngrok has been such a powerful tool for webhook testing is that if you want to receive a webhook into your app or into your n8n instance, you need to be able to have somewhere a public URL for that and for that webhook to connect to. And we're going to do a similar thing here, but we're going to do it also in a more controlled way than just exposing an entire port for your service to the public internet and then having the webhook go through that way. So we're actually going to hop over to GitHub for a little while. I'm going to assume that most of you have a GitHub account if you're following along. You know, if not, I apologize. There's many other ways that you can kind of create and trigger webhooks. But to me, this was a really easy way to not only trigger the webhook, but then show some of how traffic policy can restrict what services or people or potential attackers could try to hit your webhook endpoints. So what we will do is we'll create a new repo. You can call this whatever you would like. I'm going to choose myself as the owner. I'm going to call this office hours 10 just to keep the naming scheme totally conventional and create the repository. So I'll give folks a minute to do that. And in that meantime, if anyone is feeling brave, and wants to put, if you have set up IP restrictions on your endpoint, you've been following along so far. And if you're feeling brave, drop the link in the chat and see if anybody else can access your n8n, or if you did set it up properly. It's one good way to test to see if anybody else can access it. So for now, what I'm going to do is continue along with setting up a webhook from GitHub. We're gonna end up pointing that to n8n. So you can go into settings, webhooks, and we're gonna add a webhook. And then we do need to set up n8n first in a moment. So we'll kind of come back here in a minute, but at least you have the kind of like fundamentals of the webhook set up. Now we can finally do a little bit of work within n8n. This isn't really designed to be like a super n8n heavy workshop, but I do want to make sure that we're getting some data in from external sources, and that sets you up to be able to hopefully do some interesting things with your setup in the future. So we're gonna create a workflow. Going to add a first step, and we just want that first step to be a webhook. So you can see here that it's probably pretty small. I can't make it that much bigger just due to UI constraints here, but you can see that the webhook URL here is using the public URL that I added to the container. So that's all set up nicely. Otherwise, this would say localhost, and you'd have to like change this around as you put it into GitHub and do all sorts of kind of like workarounds. This way is much cleaner and easier to understand. I want to set up the HTTP method to be a post instead of get. And instead of this like random UUID path, I just want to call this GitHub just for this, just for the sake of simplicity. Now what we can do is grab the production URL for this, which is my ngrok URL /webhook/GitHub. Now we'll click to copy that, and I'm just going to close this. And maybe you like to send test events, but I like to just YOLO things. I'm going to make my workflow active, and that means that I can use the production URL in other places. If I go back over to GitHub's my GitHub repo and the webhook that I started to create, I can now paste in this URL into the payload, and I can just leave everything else as expected. Now we've gotten an error with our first initial webhook test, but that's okay. It's actually to be expected. I actually wanted to open it up. We're sending the post request fine. We've got the URL as expected, but we're getting a 403 error in response, which means that we are not set up to be able to make this request, or GitHub is not set up to be able to make this request. But again, that's to be expected because we set up that IP restriction on our cloud endpoint. So like this is set up for just me. It means that nobody else, including GitHub, can access my n8n instance. And we actually want GitHub to be able to do that. So we need a way to filter some of the traffic so that some traffic is subject to IP restrictions and some traffic is not. To do that, I'm going to write an expression, and I'm going to say the URL, the URL and the path of the request. If it has a webhook, if it has this, I want to say if it does not have the /webhook string in the path, then I do want to restrict IPs. But if it does have webhook /webhook, I want it to let it through. I will save that. And if we hop back over to the webhooks themselves, We can try to redeliver. And it's still not working for a reason that is not supposed to be happening. So previously, to set this up, I had set up webhook verification, which is another traffic policy action that you can add. And I'm not sure why it is still being triggered, but what we should have seen here is that this was successful because we're letting GitHub kind of like sneak around our IP restrictions. The chat has gone quiet, which I feel like either means everyone is heads down working, or everyone is totally lost and just like needs this to be recorded so that they can follow this along later. But we're just going to keep chugging along because I do want to make sure we save some time for questions about n8n or anything else that people might have at the end of the session. Aishika is demanding questions. Okay. Well, good news is that the next step of what I wanted to do was set up webhook verification. And this basically like allows you to say, I want to be able to accept webhooks from a specific provider and only if it contains a specific secret within the payload. So we can do this to allow GitHub to send webhooks to n8n, but only if it has like a secret that you have declared. To do that, we are going to add one more rule to our traffic policy chain here. And this rule says that if the path specifically contains webhook / GitHub, which is the like the webhook URL that we set up. We want to go back to n8n really quick. That's the one we set up here when we said the path is GitHub, and the the path is webhook / GitHub. We want to use the verify webhook action here with GitHub. And for me, I want my secret to be office hours rules. Back in GitHub and in our webhook settings, I can now add this secret. And I'll update the webhook and try this one more time. And we're going to hope that the demo gods are kind. And they are. This one went through successfully. And you can see here that n8n, like my self-hosted n8n instance has responded saying the webhook or the web flow has started. And I should be able to go into the executions here and see this payload from GitHub, which has all of the goodness that comes with a GitHub payload. And what I wanted to do here, or what I envisioned of doing here eventually, would be maybe to like pipe this webhook data over to a local hosted Olama instance or some other LLM, have the LLM like process the content of a pull request or a commit and maybe spit out like what is going on in this pull request in simplified human language. Stuff like that is where I would love to experiment with n8n some more. But for now, it's just like, let's make sure that we can get this data into our instance through ngrok in a really controlled manner. Okay, we got a couple questions about the custom URL. That would be where if you miss that step, potentially is to, let's see if I can just bring this tab over into here. Oh, geez. Here we go. This would be this step to update the webhook URL for your n8n instance with the ngrok domain that you reserved earlier. If you did it with npm, I think you would have to set an environment variable on your command line, like it would be something like export webhook URL and then URL, and then you whatever I don't know how it runs, but it would be like n8n, something like that. What's for dinner? It's way too early for me to think about dinner. Uh, but I do like this. I do like this suggestion. I really want to know what that is. It sounds great, but I'm gonna have to go Google that later to see exactly what it looks like. Sounds fantastic. Okay, let's see where we stand on the demo, kind of as I was thinking about it. I actually feel like we covered most of what I wanted to talk about here. I really just wanted to show this process of setting up the front door pattern of a cloud endpoint that's routing into your internal endpoint that is in turn routing to n8n. And then some of the ways that you can use our traffic policy engine to, with like very fine precision, decide what traffic gets sent to where and denied or allowed in, or requires a webhook secret, anything like that. um, to me, like, this is just the start of so many different things that you can build with n8n, and maybe even host n8n alongside other self-hosted applications or services that you have, and you want to like consolidate all of them in one place. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to hide this. Um, there's a couple ways that we could take the remainder of our session today. One would be like, we just, cut our losses here and say we're good, we're done, we're good. Um, you know, we built something with n8n and that was fun. I'm happy to answer questions about n8n or hosting n8n instances with ngrok, or if you have questions about anything ngrok at all, I'm here to answer them. Happy to do that and spend the time with you all to get that rolling. And thank you, Aishika, for behind the scenes sending the link to this form. I will bring that up on my screen for just a moment to talk about what we're looking for. If you have been following along with this workshop, hopefully y'all can see this. Yes, you can. Just, your name, your email, and specifically the email address that is associated with your ngrok account. That is going to be how we can identify who you are and be able to send swag out to you. We also want to see your endpoint below. I'll be checking these, just to see that like you got it up and running. Bonus points if you got IP restrictions working, anything like that, or like built anything on top of that. And we would love feedback from you about like, what were some of the hiccups? What were some of the paper cuts that you faced along the way? What did you not understand? That could be about what I've been talking about here, or that could be honestly like any part of your experience with ngrok. We'd love to hear that. And of course, let me know like what you feel about the workshop. Probably should have added a section there about like, feedback, like constructive feedback, or what you would have liked to see different. But happy to hear, happy to get some initial feedback on what it feels like to have this kind of workshop that is, not just a very short demo, but something more comprehensive that kind of requires you all to follow along and build alongside the rest of us. Oh, we've got a question about Aishika, if you don't mind. Yeah, let's show the cat. Here we go. Have
Why
some.
would you do that? He was busy biting me and I was getting rid of him. Why would you bring me on screen? But yeah, it's we are working on a couple of initiatives. We already have rolled out quite a few. Not sure if you have followed along, but we also have the community licenses program. So if you're maintaining any open source repositories, and we have got a couple of I would say terms to be a part of the community license program. So go through that. If you are a maintainer of an open source repository, you can already request that. For educational institutions and for students, I would say it's going to take us some time, but we have been considering it, and you should hear back from us really soon, and we would be sure to let you folks know.
Yeah, that's perfect. I would say reach out if you haven't already like contacted our support team. They are just it's support@ngrok.com, or you can fill out our contact us page. And that at least like even if we're not ready to jump into something right away, that at least lets us flag your accounts as interested in that. And then once we're once we've got something formalized again, we can reach out in um, a really nice way.
We've
Um,
got a lot of interesting plans and ideas to get that rolling. So be on the lookout. Follow us on our social media platforms as well. But you'll definitely hear from us in our newsletters too when we are ready.
yeah. That's a great question about what we are using n8n for. Um, I would love to see in the chat if people have what they are. Like maybe they've already been using n8n on a self-hosted instance just on localhost, and the ngrok part is new and they've been building stuff. But to be honest with me, like I haven't experimented around with it as much as I would like to, or like there's stuff that I want to build, but it's just so little time. Aishika, have you built any n8n stuff?
Um, I would say I'm a heavy fan of automation, but I'm using other tools, so I haven't had the opportunity to dabble with n8n yet. But I mean, after this workshop, I'm actually inclined.
Yeah. I think for me, what I would like to do, maybe over the summer, I'll find time to do this, is actually set up a decent home lab somewhere in my house, and like have a beefy machine that can do, like LLM processing. Maybe it's got a GPU in there to do some of that stuff. And yeah, have this like local LLM that I can just like pipe data, pipe whatever I feel like, and see how it responds. I feel like for me, that would be like there's certain things that I'm okay sending over to Chat GPT or Claude or other like little AI tools, but there's other things that I would just love to keep under wraps, keep just within my network. And also something I thought about as Aishka, you just said in the chat there about IoT devices. Like I think connecting IoT devices to LLMs that are hosted somewhere else, especially through ngrok, of course, would be really cool to see like what an IoT device can do when it has the brain of an LLM backing it up. A part two of the workshop, a high level flyover of n8n. Maybe that's what we'll do for July. To be honest, like I don't know what July is going to be all about yet. So maybe it's n8n. Maybe we continue this role and let people watch this recording and get all of this webhook stuff set up, and then maybe we can all build something together in July. Would be happy to do that and kind of like continue along this path of using traffic policy to shape the traffic as it comes in. Awesome. Or we could just run more workshops. Yes. There's always room for that. And we're going to be, like as you mentioned early on, you're going to be running this in-person meetup uh, in around MCP with Composio next week, which is shocking that it's happening so soon. But we're going to be doing more of that stuff in the future. We're going to, like there's many opportunities, and love the input and the feedback on what people are interested in seeing. We've got a debate about Make versus n8n, and is Make a different kind of okay? It's a different type of like workflow automation tool. Interesting. I will have to investigate a little bit and see if Make does it have a self-hosted version like n8n does? Are there ways that you could host both of those things side by side on the same machine and use some routing with traffic policy to get those interconnected? Definitely some interesting things that you could potentially do. I think that would be another, just seeing Cursor here as well, like being able to do some local code development and send that to like a locally hosted LLM to get feedback or to have it build for you, I think would be really fun as well. All right. The chat is still going. Thanks all for the comments and suggestions. A Slack bot, Node backend, LLM quadrant proof of concept. Okay, love that. Slack was another thing that I considered showing off as the like webhook provider, but I wasn't sure that like I think GitHub is nice. We're all developers or engineers. I think we all have a GitHub account that we can just create a new repository for and get some webhook data going. But Slack is definitely one that I'm sure many of us have and would love different ways to automate things in Slack, whether that's stuff that's coming in or stuff that you're sending out. Love that idea. I'll have to go look into the quadrant part of things. Yes, Aishika, this is what you said. If you can open a port, you can get in on ngrok. And I think even like, especially as I was trying to show with traffic policy today, if you can open a port, you can get in on ngrok, and you can also control exactly how you want it made public to the internet. It's not just an on-off switch. It's not just I'm exposing this entire thing, this entire port. I want to let specific IPs through, or I want to add an OAuth dialog in front of my endpoint, or I want to automatically block all bot traffic or traffic from Tor networks, or there's so many different ways that you can mix and match traffic policy to get that job done. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining. I think we'll kind of wrap things up here as the chat is quieting down, and it seems like there's no particular questions about what was built here. But of course, if you do have questions, I will show in a moment a couple of different ways that you can get in touch with us. Actually, I'll just do it right now. Discord. Subscribe on YouTube if you're not already. I know you're watching on YouTube right now, and we super appreciate it. There's a lot more coming even later this week, next week, in the months beyond. We've got some emails here that you can reach us. And as I said, we'll be back in July for another session. I think this YouTube session works really well. Seems like it went pretty smoothly. So we'll probably just keep this YouTube-centric way of doing office hours going. So if you're subscribed, I actually already created the stream for the next one, so you can go in there and hit the bell and get notified, like and subscribe, all those good things. And yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out, building some n8n stuff with me. Would love to hear in an email or in Discord like what else you are building around n8n and using ngrok to make it accessible and secure. Thank you, Aishika, for running the chat and answering questions while I was heads down demoing things. Always appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you all in July. Bye.